Well, good morning. Today, as I mentioned for the topic, we're going to be looking at some recently restored home videos or home movies. Recently, as the last one I finished was still exporting out of the editor when I went to bed at 1:30 in the morning. So when we talk about hot off the press, they're hot off the press. So I'm going to be starting first with the 64 World's Fair. I have a couple movies from there and then ending up probably with Expo 67. Now, most of the ones that I did today, it's kind of interesting. The one I did last night was the dirtiest film I've ever come across. I always clean these by hand before I put them on the scanner and use this solution called PEC 12 and PEC pads to clean it. And I've never seen a film that dirty. I think the guy must have been a 12-pack a day smoker and kept the film on his desk for 50 years. It was amazing. But some of these films came out really nice. Others came out dark. And that was one of the issues with the home movies back then is like anything else, you give somebody a tool, whether or not the person knows how to use it and whether or not the tool actually had exposure meters, that sort of thing. So we're going to see stuff that's a little overexposed, a little under, in some cases, way underexposed. But I got a kick of looking at some of the views of it. When we get to Expo 67, I want everybody to watch for the street lamp that seemingly has a mind of its own. Expo street lamps were just a wonderful design, but in doing the one film, you're going to see it pretty much at the 6 o'clock position on the screen. It looks like it was trying to levitate or take off. It's very wild. You'll see it. So let me go and find the first video here. And again, we're going to start with Expo 67. Oh, sorry, the 64 World's Fair. And here we go. So let me.
I don't know. You've been watching dirty movies, Bill?
I just don't want Carol to know about it. So yeah, it's the dirty movie. So let me share the screen here. Okay, so we're going to start. This particular reel was taken in 1965. You can see the park was really getting hit by a bad drought back then. A lot of the vegetation, the green lawns were really just hammered by the heat that particular year. A lot of the fountains also had signs in it about using recycled water, or they just turned some of them, the reflecting pools and stuff, they just let some of them go empty. So the Thailand Pavilion, we're going to see that at Expo 67 with a huge line. So this particular day in New York was a nice day, not super crowded. Again, we can start, you can see the lawn here is just, again, fried. We know this is 65 by some of the pavilions and exhibits, trying to narrow it down to when and where in the month. Sometimes you can do it by the pictures on the Kodak Pavilion, if you see those, or sometimes even by the floral displays. But it's a nice day, a good subject for our future time machine travels. 65 was a really bad year for a drought. The reservoir in the next town to us basically almost went dry. And they were really worried what they were going to do for water supplies. They were still getting water from upstate New York, but they had to really dial it down. And as I mentioned, the Hempstead Reservoir next to us, you could see it as you drove. The highway bisects it, and you could look down and just seas of mud in every direction. And just like we have water restrictions out here in California right now, they had the same thing back then. So not too crowded this particular day. And here comes a group from New Jersey marching through the fairgrounds. They're called the Blazers, and as you get closer to them, you'll see that they're wearing blazers and straw hats. So not New Jersey, Framingham, Mass. Ambulance going through the fair. Now that's something generally you don't see in any of the pictures. They don't look like they were going anywhere in a particular hurry, but it's, again, the nice thing you catch with some of these films, things that you don't normally expect. So let me get the next reel here.
Bill, that photographer was pretty good. Their pans were nice and slow. You could really take stuff in instead of zipping through it.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, on some of these, what I've done on each of them is edit out the splices and then the really bad stuff. There was the one, I think it's the third one I'm gonna be showing today. The photographer evidently forgot that they hit the record button and put the camera down at their side so you could see their feet and things just passing around. That's got to really hurt when you only get a 50-foot reel and you're paying for it, whether it's good or not. You get it home and you find out that you've taken 8 feet of your feet or the pocketbook of the woman walking next to you. So, but yeah, some of these people, my friend Mike Clark always talks about how people would just zip around, and my son did that when he was using our home video. We were on a train trip and it was nausea inducing, literally. If you try watching it, he's all over the place. So the other thing, the guy didn't go crazy with the zoom. We're going to see somebody that, oh, look, I got a zoom lens, and you'll see how that goes. So we're at the base of the New York State Pavilion here. Big enough box she's carrying, what's ever in it. Interesting, a woman just walked by, had her hair up in rollers and a scarf on. When was the last time you saw that out? Somebody walking around with hair rollers and a scarf. Now, this was incredibly dark, this whole thing here, and the computer really helped, because when you just watch the film, all you got was the silhouettes of the towers. Here's somebody up on the top of the tower trying to zoom in and getting a little bounced around. The computer has stabilized a lot of these films so that they're not bouncing or shaking with the normal shutter movement that you get on a standard 8mm movie. But the international pavilions down below, bell system way in the back. Let's go take a look at that. There's Johnson Wax. You can see the air quality in New York was not real good back at this point in time. Look how smoggy everything is around there. Back then, a lot of the buildings in the city still had their own incinerators. I can remember my grandparents had an apartment, and you would just go down the hall, open the hatch, drop all your trash down, and they'd burn it down in the basement. And luckily, at this point in time, they were just outlawing all of that and getting rid of the smog was just terrible back then. Just a real sickly yellow to the air a lot of times.
Is this regular 8?
Yes, this is all regular 8. Super 8 hadn't been invented yet. Now, what it is, it's wider than what you would normally get, for a roll of Super 8 watching in a movie projector, because a lot of the cameras had a little overscan on either side. The sprockets would be off to the left here. But what I was able to do is scan it wide from frame to edge of each frame, and then take out the garbage, the scratches and stuff, the sprockets on the side. But most projectors have a gate that would give this a 4:3 ratio, and this came out. I scanned it at 16:9, adjusted the ratio back to a 4:3 frame ratio, but we got the extra footage on either the left or right side of the screen. Morocco tents in the background there. Again, Johnson Wax, the fountains of the world, fountains of the planet back there, GE. You can tell this is 65 by the tents out there for GE. And also by the Chrysler 65 paint scheme. And just a real quick view, the Capitol's lit up on the Unisphere at night. The fountains dancing down below, and the day comes to an end. So let me get the next one here. Okay, where did the next one go? There's one more. I don't know where it went. Let me start with this one here, though. This was the one I did last night that was incredibly dark and dingy. So we start off with the tower, the electric light pavilion here, the Tower of Light. So I said, this is the dirtiest film I've ever had to deal with. Luckily, it's cleaned up both physically, and then the computer is able to take out a lot of the miscellaneous dirt and scratches. The pavilion, and this is called the Pavilion in '64. In '65, it was the Winston Churchill Pavilion. Foreman Pavilion, they encourage people from the Mormon community to grow the flowers and bring them in and put them on display out here in the floating area. They had little islands that they floated the flowers on, and at night they lit up lights in them floating out there. As the drought went on in '65, they eventually let this area go dry. But that was a big source of pride for a lot of the Mormon families to be able to come back, and say those were my, my flowers from my particular church for this week, this month, and it was a big thing. There's the line for GE, again, one of the more popular pavilions at the fair. Now, obviously real dark, but 3 nuns inside the Vatican Pavilion. When I first looked at this on the scanner, this was almost jet black. The only thing I can make out was kind of bibs on the nuns' outfits there, and the computer was able to drag this amount of detail out of it. So that's the nice thing with the technology we have today, is we can reverse a lot of the errors that were in here. More nuns. The altar, the church, this portion of it has been moved up to the Groton, Connecticut area, and you can still make out the design, the windows. That sculpture on the wall there of the Vatican Pavilion is up in Kennebunkport, Maine. Carol and I were up there a number of years ago visiting friends, and she knew about my World's Fair enthusiasm. So she said, "Oh, we have to go show you something today," and she wouldn't tell me what it was. We went on the ground of this monastery, and all of a sudden there's the sculpture standing there. It was a real, oh my goodness, that was a real surprise moment. And a real quick view of Bourbon Street and ends. Give me just 1 second. I had a longer one from the '64 fair, and I don't know where it went. So hang on, let me see if I could find it real here.
How
Oh,
long
okay.
does it take
Here
you
it
to
is.
prepare these pitches every week? How much
What's
time
that?
you put in this? How long does it take you to prepare these pitches every week?
Oh, it depends on the week. If I just want to go back and say, hey, I'm going to go grab some stuff I haven't looked at in a while, it's just not a problem. It's trying to. I figure I put it together about 2.5, 3 hours a week to get ready for everything. So I
That's
found the other one
appreciable.
here. Let me start with this one. This one's let me just pause it real quick. This is going to start at the 64 World's Fair, and then we're going to go to a unidentified animal park somewhere in New York, possibly up near Lake George. So if anybody is able to help me identify it, I would really appreciate it. This was a longer roll. It started with the family playing at their front yard and ends up with them going to the beach, and I took out all that stuff. But again, exposure meter or some better lighting would have helped a little bit on some of this stuff. Super, super dark. So around the fountain of the fairs, they haven't turned them on yet for the day. They're probably still loading the fireworks out into the launchers out there. Every morning they would let the tide take the water out of the fountain by damming up the intake river, walk out on a walkway, load up the mortars, open up the dam, let the thing reflood, and then off it would go. So in the morning, it's very rare to see the fountains going. Equitable Life Insurance in the back with their bleachers. They had the best seats in the house for the fireworks show. And we got the solar fountain and the lunar fountains. They're pretty much identical, other than the center column that was up in one of them. We can see the skyway going up above. Speaking of the skyway. It was a great system, you know, 2 cars on either side, double what, you know, for example, the Disneyland system. Same mechanics, but just a double it. The British Lion Pub. And speaking of the Skyway, we're up on it, taking a trip across the area. You can date it to 64 by one of the escorters seen down below. This is where the stabilization really comes in handy, because otherwise, every time you're going over one of the towers or the cable is just bumping it, or the car sways in the wind a little, the camera really was shooting all over the place. So it does a nice job of taking out the shakes and jitters. Now, in terms of how long it takes to do these, it's outside of Sierra Leone. First time I've seen this particular act, and that's the nice thing. Again, you get all sorts of pictures of things and you see it, and then what makes it fun for me is when something unique comes along. In this particular case, this film here runs about 11 minutes. In the scatter works in pretty much real time, so that's 11 minutes, but it takes probably about 20 minutes or so to clean it and get it ready to go. You do about 11 minutes of scanning. And that's where your real fun starts, because you export it out of there, put it into the program that does the stabilization. There's the aerial tower ride. Does the stabilization, color adjustments, that sort of thing. For an 11.5-minute film, that runs about 2 hours to go and do that process of it. From there, it goes into a film editor, in this particular case, Pinnacle Studio. And I take out all the bad splices and the stuff when the guy forgot to turn it off, that sort of thing. That can take maybe an hour or so to get it all done for about 11 minutes of film. And then it takes about 30 minutes to export it back out into a video file. So to do an 11-minute film from start to finish, probably about 4 hours. Again, that's the nice thing with video here. You know, the dinosaur, you don't know if you just see a still picture that, you know, his jaw open and shut. The brontosaurus over here at Sinclair turned his head from side to side. We just went up the elevator to the New York State Towers. Real quick shot there. Looking across at New Jersey, there's the New York State Pavilion still there. Now the Queens Museum. And looking down at Chrysler. This gives you a good idea of how big the Astral Fountain is. A friend of mine owns one of these stars, and it's several feet across. I mean, really, really large size fountain, but that whole thing rotated. The fountain you can see is only going up about half the height of the cage. It originally went all the way up, but they found out that it was just too powerful, and the wind in Flushing Meadows was always soaking people around there. Here's the miniature train at the Long Island Railroad exhibit. You can still ride this train today out on Long Island, and they're just restoring another set of cars they've had in storage for it. So they had a dial on this cab for the train is at the Oyster Bay Railroad Museum, and they're about 80% through repainting it and making it look just like it did at the World's Fair. After the fair, it went to a playground on Long Island, sat there for years. Playground got sold off and developed into housing, and the railroad was able to pick up this car. And there was also an observation car where you could pose for pictures on it. That unfortunately had rotted away too much. But that was actual cab off a real engine, that the engine had come out of service, and the Long Island Railroad chopped it off and brought it out there. So if you go to Oyster Bay, you can walk onto that cab today, and it's still got the throttles and the dials and everything that an engineer would have seen. So now we're at the Unknown Animal Park. If anybody happens to know where this is, please let me know. Sometimes you get a photographer that's really good that will take a sign, pictures of signs, so just do it. I try to do that when I go off and take videos or anything, is try to remind myself where this was and what was I taking pictures of. Unfortunately here we don't get it. I'm also working on some films from the Lake George area. And this may be there. We'll see a kid wearing a Lake George shirt in one of the shots. But Lake George had so many great amusement parks. And I'm trying to think that this may be Catskill Game Farm, because they had a big bear enclosure like that. But I don't remember this from my particular visits.
Could it be Storybook Land, Bill?
I don't know, Don. I mean, it could be with that Peter Pumpkin thing. It kind of strikes out, but I don't remember them having elephants and stuff there. So
I'll see if I can find a map of the park and see if there's anything like that.
great, yeah, I appreciate it, because I got some really nice movies of Lake George, of Storytown, Frontierland, and some other areas that I'm working on. We went to all those places as a kid each year when we went up. We went to Lake George each year for many years, and I'm looking forward to getting those restored. You can see a rocket ride in the background. It actually looks like a helicopter ride in the background there. You see how much dirt some of these things pick up. This is after cleaning it. Some of it just gets embedded in it, and you can only do so much. If it gets really bad, sometimes I'll just crop that stuff out. In this particular case, now it's picked up a nasty set of scratches along the way. So I just left it here in case anybody, something comes along to help identify it. And then luckily, whatever was wrong with it dies back down.
Yeah, it looks like I'll let you know later, but it looks like it is indeed Storytown.
Oh, that would be great.
Pumpkin eater pumpkin there. So I'll keep looking, see if I can tell for sure.
Yeah, it's obviously a long time since I went to Storytown. Carol and I took Margot there when she was young. We went back on a visit, and I've got some pictures of that. But by that time, it'd been revamped with much more of a thrill ride, addition to it. But I would feel bad for a giraffe being up in Storytown in the winter. That area. Hopefully, they took him to some nicer, warmer place. somewhere I have to find my family movies. We have pictures of my brother and I going out to a place on Long Island. It was called Lollipop Farm. And we were both wearing straw hats, and all of a sudden one of the goats decided it was going to eat my brother's hat. And poor Jim was not at all happy about that. Well, I'll stop with the animals here because it just pretty much goes on for about another minute or so. So we're going to hop out of, let's see, going to go over to Expo 67. This was kind of a nice movie that came by here. This one runs 14 minutes. But this photographer really seemed to have a pretty good idea of what he or she was doing. So we're going to start off here. These boats you could go off and get boat rides on, and you could go on a Viking ship. My budget, unfortunately, didn't allow for this back in 67, so I could only watch enviously. And in later years for Man in His World, some of these things did not operate. But they had a number of boat rides. The one thing that they had was a boat ride around the canals, and that was much cheaper than these other boat rides. So we're going to hop over to the Britain Pavilion, and you're going to see the line here. Quite a long line. Now, this particular day, there was some VIP visiting Expo, and you're going to see crowds of people chasing after him, photographers, cameras, movie cameras. I'm trying to figure out, looking at it, it may have been Prince Philip, but it could also be somebody else. So as you see him, the footage, if anybody is able to identify it for sure, let me know. But none in the crowd. They love going to World's Fairs. The Metro Express train, and here's the mini rail going around. Mini rail originally started as a loop that you could get on it and just ride it for as long as you wanted. Well, it was a wonderful way to tour the Expo grounds. It was also, okay, so here we see bagpipers going in. We're going to see the VIP in a few moments. The nice thing about the mini rail is it had a nice breeze from moving around. So everybody rode it, nobody got off. And they finally had to change it to, you went from point A to point B, had to get off to give other people a chance, and then got back on again. So mini rail, super successful, and stayed in operation for many years after Expo closed. Again, mostly Britain there. The Caddy Mavic and the People Tree. There goes the Expo Express again. First computerized, fully automated train, and union insisted they still put somebody in the front cab anyway, just because the union rules were not written with computers in mind.
Hey, Bill, do you know when they were preparing the islands for Expo, they enlarged them by using the fill from the subway project that was also going on at the same time? They had all that extra dirt was brought out in barges and dumped into St. Lawrence.
Yeah, it was a great way to do it. Now we're going to hop over to Germany. Yeah, they did a lot of dredging, on top of the subway fill. But you're building a subway. Where do you put all that dirt? Oh, let's go build a World's Fair. So it was a great combination. So this tent was real experimental for Germany. The pylons that come up here held the tent by cables, and they were able to use this same technology to a different scale over at the Munich Olympics. This is kind of interesting footage. This is a replica of a Gutenberg printing press, and revolutionized the world. It's just, again, what we take for granted today with everything printed. But they had this guy out here, and he would print things out on the press. What I got a kick out of is how they went for authenticity, because you see he's got a wooden thing here. He's putting ink on, and he's going to run it across the type. And when I worked, I did some print work in high school. We had a shop. We would ink the plates with rollers, but I guess Gutenberg didn't have rollers. He used this particular device. So to stay authentic, they used the same device. So he's the movable type, the thing that revolutionized printing and reading for the masses. And the photographer was quite taken by it because we get the whole example of the whole process. Put your paper in it, roll it in, put a lot of pressure on it to press the paper against the ink, count to 3, clean out your track, open it up. And you've got your printed page. You can see how labor intensive it would be to print a whole book, but think about how labor intensive it had been before for the monks to illustrate all these things by hand. So something that took years now could be done in hours. It was a major, major development.
He also had the famous Gutenberg bald spot, if you noticed.
We leave Germany, we go to Ceylon, Sri Lanka today. A lot of these things, again, the tile work and everything, all done back in the native countries, brought over here. A lot of times they had to get a temporary visa for the people to come in, put things together. India. Again, Expo was a real eye candy. That's again my favorite thing about World's Fair is I know nothing about architecture, building, or anything like that. But the fact that you can go there and see these crazy shaped designs and buildings and things that you don't see in downtown, Granada Hills. Oh, here's Thailand mentioned, the line. You can see just how popular it was. They brought the pavilion up from New York and expanded it. Next door was Burma, we're looking at here. But Thailand was very popular, and originally they talked about bringing it back to Thailand, but when they decided to go for Man in His World, they left it there, and it lasted for a number of years until finally worn down and torn out. So the French Pavilion here, still there today as a casino. Carol and I went there 3 years ago when we were there the last time. So it's kind of weird to go back there today. Most of the fair structures are gone, but you'll come around the bend and all of a sudden there'll be a piece of sculpture remaining. In this particular case, the whole pavilion is still there. So nice, nice way to evoke some memories of a fun time back in your youth. And here you can see the VIPs coming through the crowd. Everybody's coming, racing along, trying to get pictures of who he is. We'll see him more in a closer shot later on. But quite an entourage moving along with him. The Mounties really did a great job. We'll see the horse in just a moment. They had to really train those horses quite well to put up with all the stuff that people would do. So everybody's waiting for the VIP to come out. You can see the cameras. And you got to walk the red carpet. In a shot there, to me, it looked like Prince Philip coming down, but I don't know for sure. Australia, very popular pavilion. They had, kangaroos and other things in a little zoo out back, but they had these wonderful chairs inside with an audio tour of Australia. As you sat in the seat, the speaker would come on, and they had a French section and an English section. So it was very, very popular. We're over at the USSR. Pavilion is taken down. All the Soviet nation pavilions were taken down in '68 and sent back to their individual countries. One of them ended up staying in Canada, was donated to a town that helped the survivors of a plane crash. United Nations. The the Russian pavilion is still in Moscow today. There's the flags of all the members of the United Nations flying there. Cuba was a bit of fascination. I mentioned in past talks, the US government refused to acknowledge that Cuba existed and strongly suggested American citizens not go there. So of course, everybody would go there. And we're going to see a real quick shot of the restaurant here. So there they are, people inside enjoying. Looks like maybe they're having some ropa viejas, Carol. That's her favorite Cuban dish. And Cuban flag and people dancing and having a parade through the area. Line there is going up to the train, the Expo Express. You look at the lights shaking there from side to side. And now look at it here, bottom center. The one light was very, very loose. And I almost expected to see Joey Vento at the base of it trying to take it home with him. So Indians of Canada showed some pictures 2 weeks ago. They had a controversial display about how their lands have been stolen from them by settlers coming to Canada. But a very powerful story, totem pole, and then there's this mural is very brightly done. It really eye popped out, and then the photographer caught the sign here and honor my friends. Oh, this is the Atlantic provinces. Can't imagine the size ship that anchor would go on. They had this display out front where all summer long these people built a boat using traditional handcrafting tools, and they were in a mad race to get it done so that they could sail it off at the end of Expo, and they managed to make it. Flags of the maritime provinces. The Katimavik, we're going to go inside a giant inverted pyramid. Very, very strange pavilion. Down below you had the people tree, which had pictures and sounds of Canadians in all walks of life. So as you stood underneath it, you'd hear people talking about life in their town, their industry. The maple leaf flag was fairly new for Canada at that point in time, so very proudly waving. But the people tree was kind of a neat exhibit. In later years, it was just colored panels, none of the people, because when they signed licenses for the people to use their images, it was for Expo 67. They never thought about Man in His World in 68. They didn't have licenses. And rather than try to go back and get them all again, they just put colored panels in there instead. See how patient these horses have to be? Kendall is a horse person. She can probably really appreciate the training that they have to go through to be able to withstand the noise and constant stimuli. I know the Mounted Police Department goes through here in LA and in New York goes through extensive training of their horses, including throwing firecrackers near them and stuff so they don't react to stuff like that and go wild in a crowd. Closer view of the people tree. Up at the top of the Katimavik, looking around, kind of an op art seating area down below. They did concerts and shows. Good sized crowd. Expo more than met its expected numbers. Did quite a nice business. That because it did so well gave birth to the rebuild of it for 68. The sculptures inside the Katimavik were kind of different. Here you can see a giant sand timer going around, clocks. There were kinetic things moved. You had the set of stairs going down, or you had a funicular railroad that you could go up to the top. And we'll end up with a quick view around Swan Lake. And the place donations and the torch burning during the time Expo was in sight. So I have one other quick video. Let me go find it real quick. Where did it go? Okay. It's
So
just- yeah.
what was inside that counting Mavic? It was just empty, a hollow inverted pyramid?
Yes, that's all it was a giant pyramid. They had displays down below. Oh, here's a video. I already showed this to Carol earlier today, but this was taken 2 years ago today. So it's not World's Fair, but I still thought I'd share it anyway.
Yes.
The El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. I took Carol out for a drive and said, hey, let's just go see what's going on in Hollywood today. I don't know if I want to go to Hollywood. Let's just go anyway. So anyway, I just had fun with that. So so some videos. I hope people enjoyed the trip back. Kendall, do you train horses to be that well behaved? You're muted.
Well, for starts, they've got to be a fairly friendly horse anyway. Because I rode a horse, so I've ridden a horse there, that it's not very friendly. I mean, he'll put up with you, but he doesn't want you to pet him all the time and that kind of stuff. So the horse would have to be friendly, and he was a very kind horse, very pretty horse.
Yeah.
Listen, just an aside about Prince Philip, which that guy probably was Prince Philip. We got tickets to the 1984 Equestrian Olympics, and part of it was held in Santa Anita. And I was there with a friend, and they gave us a whole protocol we had to follow with this guy. Like, for example, you couldn't just sit there and stare at him. If he walked by, you had to drop your eyes and drop your head, just like you were kind of like bowing to him. And then he presented ribbons to all the guys that won. And he not only presented them, but he stood there and talked to and petted each horse. I know what that feels like, because that would be me too. But it was very interesting to be in the same proximity, and they were very, they said, you know, you need to bow your head and look down when he walks by. And we did. Everybody did. Even
Well,
though we weren't a subject, you know, we weren't part of the British population, that's what they asked us to do.
Well, coming from an Irish background, I probably would have said hi differently, but Carol and I were actually there. Carol and I were
Wouldn't
there
have
for
washed.
we might have been right near you that day. Carol and I, we put in for the lottery for the 84 Olympic tickets, and we ended up getting a couple different events, and one of them was dressage. And we thought, oh, this is going to be kind of neat. And we went out to Santa Anita, and the people came around, they did it. And then they did the next routine. After about 5 or 6 of them in a row, we realized, oh my God, this is going to be a really, really long day, because everyone was pretty much doing the same thing. And it was hot, and we were sitting out there, and I don't know, we probably stayed about an hour. I said, okay. And then we also got archery, and I used to teach archery. So I thought, oh, this would be really, really interesting. And it was about as interesting as watching paint dry, because they would come out with the arrow, shoot it, the spotter with a telescope would tell them that they were 6 millimeters to the left or whatever, and then they would shoot again. I was just happy to hit the target. These people, of course, were going for a much better thing. So we had driven all the way down. I think that was in Santa Ana or someplace way down. So we went all the way down there, watched that. And about an hour later, we headed home. But we also got we got some of the diving competition at USC, and that was much more interesting. So
I went to all the horse events. I really lucked
So
out.
we were there at that.
I'm a connoisseur of horses and dressage, and I love it. It's hard to watch it all because I really don't get the subtlety. I mean, one of them looked better than the other to the judge, but to me, they all look pretty damn good. And we also went to baseball. I went to the horses and I went to baseball, and that was it.
we went to baseball too. We had season tickets for the Dodgers, and that included going in and watching it. I'm just
Yeah.
reading through the comments here. Harold, you had something while I'm reading here?
Yes, actually, some more details about royal protocol. One interesting story, which is continuously being told by one of our former Toronto mayors from the 1970s. There was a royal visit to Toronto and a civic dinner, and the protocol office 6 months before would ask all the guests, what would you like to drink at the dinner? Get your orders in. But then on the day of the visit at the dinner, they'd bring a tray to Prince Philip of 6 different drinks. If he picked one up, that was fine. Everybody would then be served their drinks. If he did not drink, no one would drink. And your order from 6 months ago is null and void. Nobody will be drinking then.
Well, did he drink?
That time he did. But the protocol office was very clear that, only if he takes a drink will anybody else, the hundreds at that civic dinner, be allowed their pre-ordered 6 months ago drinks.
Oh, wow. Would you get a refund?
Well, these were invited guests.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of protocol with
Oh,
English.
definitely, yes.
Yeah.
We are not amused.
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't
And-
mind.
And the Expo 67 site was also used for the 1976 Olympics, which were held in Montreal. And it was the rowing basin for the canoeing and other aquatic racing events. And they did actually dig about a 1.5 mile trench, destroyed some of the pavilions, which were still standing. And that was used for the Olympic rowing events that year in 76 and is still there. You can still row, and they've got some rowing clubs there using that particular facility.
Yeah, they've changed the island so much. They put in those the Olympic thing, and then they have the Formula One race course.
Exactly.
I understand that Montreal is still paying for the 76 Olympics, though. So
No, actually, they finished paying it off about 5 years ago. It took 30 years
wow,
paying off the Olympic Stadium, which cost more than $1 billion back in 76. And there was a famous cartoon of a declaration by the Montreal mayor. When he was going for the Olympics, he said it would only cost about $160 million. And his claim was, there is no way that there's no more chance of the Olympics having a deficit than a man having a baby. And so one of the political cartoonists had a picture of the mayor on the phone calling, saying, hello, Morgenthaler, who was notorious or infamous or famous at that time for being pro-abortion. He was an abortion doctor. So it was Drapeau calling up the abortion doctor after his claim the Olympics could not have a baby.
God. Yeah, I mean, again, that was a tremendous mistake they made. The whole
Mhm.
finances, everything on that. But it
Yes.
did do a lot for Montreal. I mean, that's a beautiful stadium they did, for it. Carol and I went up and visited that when we were up in Montreal as well. So,
Yeah. Unfortunately, the stadium is used for hardly anything anymore. That the baseball team moved to Washington years ago.
right.
And even the Canadian Football League team, which used to play in that stadium, now they're playing at the university at an outdoor stadium there, which is much smaller. So occasionally they have car shows or major trade fairs. But one thing they have done, the tower, the inclined tower, which was hollow before, they built some offices in there. So there's about 7 stories of call centers for a credit union, for a bank located in that tower.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
And you can ride, it's a funicular railway up the inside of the tower to an observatory at the top. And it's under renovation right now for revitalization. But that is one spectacular ride, and it will be returned in about a year or two.
Yeah, I don't think it was open when we were there.
Yeah.
So we would have done that. So,
Been
Yeah,
closed
that
for a
tower,
few years.
tower is designed to support the cables to hold up the roof.
Yes.
right.
And it was to be a retractable roof, and they're now on the third roof. One of them, a giant hole appeared because it was not really designed for Montreal snowfalls.
Oh, my.
And one winter, part of the roof collapsed onto the auto show that was there.
Ouch.
And so they're on their third roof now, talking about a fourth roof. And the current one, I think, would be about $350 million.
Wow.
So there's still quite a bit of controversy about the stadium. Many Montrealers call it the Great OWE.
So Bill, how'd you get your name on the marquee of the El Capitan Theater? How'd you
Oh,
manage it?
it was actually pretty easy. The theater was it's owned by Disney, and they had like everything else in California at the time, they closed down for the pandemic, and they weren't showing anything. So somebody I knew at Disney said, "Hey, we're trying to find ways to make use of the theater, the marquee, that sort of thing." So they had a thing where if you paid a certain amount of money, and you had to go, it took about 2 weeks to get Disney legal to approve the wording of it. But it was interesting that they would give you a window of amount of time that they would agree to put the thing up there. So in my particular case, I said, okay, I'll go for an hour because I don't know exactly when I can get Carol there. But so we'll be there, say from 10 to 11 sort of thing. So we went out for the drive that day, and we had first driven over to Griffith Park, looking around, see where the old zoo is and everything. And then we said, oh, let's go over near where your dad used to, live in Hollywood. Go see that neighborhood. Hey, as long as we're here, let's see if anything's happening on Hollywood Boulevard. So I had my friend Mike Clark all set to be down there. And there's another video, a longer one, where all of a sudden you see Mike Clark come driving down the street, and then Carol's looking out the window, and you can see her head snap over to the side and going, "Hey, I haven't seen that movie before. I wonder how long it's in town." So, Carol, you were a little surprised that day?
How
To say
long
the
did it,
least.
What's that?
how long did it stay up on the marquee? You had to time it just exactly right.
An hour.
Oh, for a full hour.
Yeah.
You know, that and Randy Rainbow were my two favorite gifts that you ever gave me.
You went to see Randy Rainbow?
No, Bill, I had heart surgery a year and a half ago. And I guess you could still do it, but a lot of celebrities will record a message to you if you pay for it. And I happen to love his songs and his clever lyrics and all that. And Bill got him to tape a whole thing for me, especially to me. And it just blew me away.
Yeah, I remember you posted that on Facebook, Bill. That was really funny.
It's
Loved it.
still up on my Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been a year and a half. That's
Yeah, it was
That's
a year ago last November. So it's a little over a year and a half now.
that's amazing.
I know, it really is. I don't feel any different, but when I think about it, it's kind of scares me that I came so close to something worse happening. So everything was working for me when it did happen. And I mean, anyway, they did a good job. I have a scar on my chest, but other than that, I don't feel any different than I did before the whole thing started. So that's good.
Nothing
Well,
like having
take care of
a factory
yourself.
reset.
What was that?
So nothing like having
Yes.
a factory reset.
Oh, yeah.
Hope you had the extended warranty.
I hope so. Well, they freaked me out afterwards about what not to eat and all that. And I've always eaten a kind of healthy diet, but probably more salt than they would like. And I got really scared. And as Bill pointed out to me, my original heart lasted 72 years. And so even, I mean, how many more years do I have? But this new one, even if I don't do everything exactly the way they told me, should last a few years.
Sure.
How old is the new one?
Well, it's going to be 2 years. It's my heart. They just reconnected. I had a quadruple bypass.
Oh,
So they reconnected 4
Wow.
veins from other parts of my body to my heart. I don't know how it happened. I mean, my mother had heart disease, but I think I've lived a pretty healthy lifestyle, and it was just meant to happen, I guess. The good thing is I didn't damage my heart when I had my heart attack. So, because it could have been a lot worse. So the heart was okay. It just needed new connectors.
The only trouble is now when her heart starts racing, all of a sudden her feet start twitching and everything. Because everything's crowded. So I was just reading the comments here, and Chris Kelly said she got a kick out of me mentioning pocketbook. You know, as you'd end up with different expressions around the country, and coming from New York, back in the days when I was growing up, my aunt, everybody would always, they didn't have a purse, they had a pocketbook, so I don't know, where the dividing lines or years or some of these things are, but I'll still say something like getting online. People say, no, you get in line, or, there's different ways you have of saying things from different places. There's actually a site that I went on that you can say, do you say this or that, and you click all the boxes, and it came down and it said something like, oh, you were probably born in Brooklyn, New York, and Flatbush. And it was like, holy crap. I mean, they were able to get it down, not just from New York, not just from Brooklyn, but from Flatbush, so it's really amazing how they can pick up the different vernaculars like that. So you don't hear the Eastern expressions either, Chris? No.
No, I don't, and I miss them. It's funny, and I have to stop myself because I naturally say pocketbook, but I have to go purse because
Yeah.
I miss it.
Well, my grandmother lived on the East Coast for a short time as a child, and I remember growing up long after she came to the West Coast, and she always referred to it as a pocketbook.
Oh,
I
yay.
got to get my pocketbook.
Yes.
And so to me, it was just a term that was another term for purse, and I didn't realize it was actually a regional one.
Was that
Yeah.
a location thing, or just that's what people called it at that time? I don't remember.
I think it's a location thing. I think because
I know there's
Yeah.
other stuff like soda and Coke,
Mhm.
that are different. And I'm trying to think, there's something else. I guess the style of a hamburger is different also from East. Out here we have lettuce and tomato and all that kind of thing. Back there you had what, ketchup and mustard? What was on a
No mustard. When I went to Calvary in 1967, we got on the bus, we drove out of New York State. I think we got across Pennsylvania. We were in Ohio or someplace, stopped at a burger place. I think even a McDonald's, went in and got it. My brother bit into the hamburger and started screaming that there was mustard on it, because you did not put mustard on a hamburger in New York. In Ohio and every place west you did. So
Yeah, that's why McDonald's burgers tasted so different and weird to us, because they put mustard and ketchup and pickles on that hamburger, and it was like, what is this?
Especially don't put mayonnaise, no mayonnaise either.
Oh no.
Oh no,
I hate
Oh,
That's
no.
the worst.
Ugh.
When we continued that trip, we got out to like Montana, and we were walking through a small town, and my brother had bought something and put in a paper bag. But the guy, we walked into the shop, whatever he was buying, the guy said, "Do you want a sack?" And my brother was, "Do you want a sack?" And he says, "Yeah, do you want a sack?" My brother says, "What do you mean, do I want a sack?" Well, you think it's something you put 50 pounds of potatoes in.
Right.
No, a paper bag.
Yep.
So give my brother the paper bag, puts the thing in. We went to another store, and my brother said something about, I want something to drink, and the guy behind the counter says, "Do you want a pop?" My brother thinks he's going to pop him in the nose. So it was like we felt like we were in another planet. No matter what we said, you want a sack, you want a pop, it was all totally different. So
All very negative.
what's that?
It was all very negative.
Yeah.
What did you call a couch or a sofa? My relatives were raised in different parts of the country, and some called it a divan, some called
I've
it a
heard that too.
Chesterfield. You know, it's
For us, it was always a sofa, and get your feet off the sofa.
yeah. We
Yes.
always called it a couch in my house.
Yeah, I think
Same here.
maybe that's what we called it too.
You know, the thing about pops, you know, soda pop that Carol was mentioning, as a flight attendant, you know, you have people come on the airplane from all over the world, but the difference between what people call soda or pop around the country is pretty amazing. I mean, people will look at you, you know, what would you like to drink? I'll have a pop. Okay, you want to work with me on this? It's like, oh, I'll have a soda. Okay, you want to work with me on this? Which do you want? Well, I'll have a soda. I guess they
What
mean
kind?
oh,
What flavor?
yeah, tell me. I got like 8 different choices here. And if they, you know, if they just wouldn't tell me, I would just pour them a glass of club soda and hand it to them. This is soda.
That's not what they were expecting. I'm
No,
sure.
exactly. And they get pissed sometime about it, but it's like, you know, you got to tell me what you want. And the other thing was coffee, you know, coffee white, coffee light,
Yeah.
black coffee. Oh, I'll take sugar after you move the cart 10 aisles down. It's like, okay.
So I spent a summer working in London, and I sent a list of equivalent expressions by the company. It was a what do you call it? Temporary office agency. And instead of eraser that we say, they call it a rubber. Until I got to know somebody well enough there, I couldn't mention it because God forbid something happened because of that. But that's what they call it, you know, it's.
Well, there's a term they use also for going to see somebody, and you got to be careful how you use it if you're not used to it. But it's like you say, are you going to go over to Linda's? Yes, I'm going to go knock her up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or to wake somebody up in the morning, you knock them up.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But
what
first
they
I
used
was
to call it
working-
in the Victorian times, because
Well, they
Elizabeth
still-
Custer
They
talks
still
about
say
how
it.
she went and knocked up the girls
Yeah.
to wake up the girls in the seminary, school. So,
Yeah.
When I
and
first
also
worked in Munich-
pocketbook, you know, in the Victorian times, you didn't see a woman lugging around some gigantic purse. They were just little like wallets or things you could put money in. You didn't have to worry about, you know, all that crap we got to carry around. We got to have an ID, we got to have a credit card, we got to have a
Wouldn't you
card.
rather have pockets and not?
And
have
all
to
your
carry that
makeup,
stuff around?
all your makeup.
Healthcare and, you know, they just
Wouldn't
put
you rather
money
have?
in a
Wouldn't you
little
rather
purse
have
and
pockets?
went. So
What's
yeah,
when
that's
they
where that
invented
probably
pockets?
came from, pocketbook.
When I first worked in Germany, I was working with a fellow from England, and the thing Carol mentioned, we were sitting there, we were all getting ready for this project, and the guy said, I'm going to go out to get some supplies. And I said, okay, great. And he goes, do you want me to bring you back some rubbers? I mean, I'm thinking, what the hell?
Were you single at the time?
Well,
Were
I
you
said to him,
single
I
at the
said, I'm
time?
flattered, but I don't know you that well. You know, I don't know what the hell he was talking about.
You can
That's
open your
why I
wallet and
I
hand
think he
them
was
one.
talking about something for your feet.
I had to be very careful that I knew somebody before I asked them, what do you call this?
Yeah. No, it was also interesting. You mentioned sodas and that, you know, you take everything for granted. And, you know, we didn't drink much soda growing up as a kid. We were allowed about once a month to have a 7-Up or something. But, you know, you get used to drinking, you know, Coke after a while or Pepsi or whatever. And I went over to Munich and I said, it was really funny. The guy that brought back the rubbers, the erasers, they looked like little soda cans. And you would take the little can, pull up the top of it, and there was the eraser. And so we had a bunch of Coke cans around. And the guy came into the office, the German fellow there, and he saw these little miniature Coke cans. And it was funny because the guy that was there actually worked for Coca-Cola. They co-owned our office in Germany at the time. So he was very proud he had found these Coke cans. I later went out and brought back a bunch of little Pepsi cans and put them around. But anyway, the German guy walks in, he sees all these little Coke cans scattered around the desktop. And he says, oh, he didn't like that at all. And I said, what do you don't like Coke? And he says, no, I can't stand it. And I said, you know, that you're the first person I've ever met that didn't, you know, really dislikes Coca-Cola that much. And he says, well, perhaps it's where the first place I had it just tainted my memory of it forever. And I said, where'd you have a Coke that was that bad? They said, prisoner of war camp in Canada. Like, oh, okay,
First time I went to London, they took us to a hamburger place. And I was kind of upset. We just landed and I missed my boyfriend and the whole thing. And so I asked for a glass of milk. And that milk came unhomogenized.
Mhm.
Oh,
And there
yeah.
was butter and there was particles in it.
It's
You
the
know, and
cream.
I'd never see anything like that in the United States. It was just a real game. And I said, what's in this? And he goes, oh, it's just butter and stuff. It hasn't been homogenized.
It's not butter, actually, it's cream. And I
Is that what
remember
it is?
staying
It
with,
looked yellow. I don't
staying
know.
with some people and the milk was delivered. And the best thing you could do was take the top off to put in your coffee. It was delicious.
Really? Well, I did drink some of it. Although it did put me off, it had particles in it.
I
know
don't
what
think
that
I would like to just drink milk like that, but in
No, it was
coffee,
a
it was
real
great.
strange trip. I said, well, I'm from the United States. I've never seen anything like this. He says, that's all we got. You want Coke?
It kind of
Was it
reminds you
chilled?
of milk that's been in the refrigerator like 6 months and you discover
Yeah,
chunks
well,
floating on top of it.
that-
Yeah.
that's
No, I
different.
think it tasted fairly fresh. They just took it from the cow.
Have,
gave
have
it
any of
to
you ever
me.
had milk, bought a carton of milk in Japan? Bill, you've been to Japan.
Yeah.
Did you ever, my first Tokyo layover, I just had this weird craving for cookies and milk. So, I get up, there's a little convenience store near the hotel we stayed in actually the village of Narita at the time, right by the airport. So I go they had Chips Ahoy and I get a carton of milk. Oh my God, you open that milk, it smells like a baby diaper.
Oh my God.
Something in the process, I mean, it tastes fine, but I mean, it smelled so bad. I was able to, gulp down a sip or two. I ended up having to put the milk, even the empty carton, I put it out in the hallway. You could just smell it.
Yeah, we stayed often at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, and I can remember one morning I decided I wanted a glass of milk at breakfast, and I asked for it. You thought I would have asked for purified plutonium. I mean, they were not used to somebody asking for a glass of milk, and they were all running around trying to figure it out. And I said, if you come back tomorrow, we'll have some for you.
Well, speaking of Tokyo and hamburgers, that's one of their favorite breakfast foods. Most of the Tokyo-based hamburger shops, meaning the ones that started there, not McDonald's, were open for breakfast. That was something they love to eat for breakfast. And pancakes is, which we like to eat for breakfast usually. I mean, you think of it as a breakfast food. That was maybe at noontime dessert and evening dessert. So it's kind of reverse.
They have those really thick pancakes in Tokyo.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when I was over there, the office loved Americans coming over because then they would go to every expensive restaurant in town and put it on the expense account. And I was there for a couple of weeks and I was getting really tired of this after a while. So one day I just announced, I'm not going out for another giant lunch. I saw Wendy's down the street. I'm going for a hamburger. And they were like, no, we have to go to someplace, Kobe steak, grass fed, you'll love it. No, I want a hamburger. And the next thing I said, that actually sounds pretty good. So there were about 12 of us all, dressed in suits and everything, standing on line at the Wendy's. And there were about 20 Japanese schoolgirls all in the little uniforms and everything, laughing and giggling and pointing at us because there were this one British guy I traveled with was about the size of the Matterhorn. And I remember we were at Tokyo Disneyland and all the kids were pointing at him because Bob was a big guy. He was about 6'3". His hair was so blonde, it was almost white. And all his kids were pointing at him. And he said, what are they saying? You know a little Japanese, Bill. What are they saying about me? And I said, oh, well, they're trying to decide if they can make an ascent of the north face and come down safely on the south. Yeah, but
well, when we were there on the relocation for the actual installation of the park in Tokyo, every Friday, because we were eating in the cafeteria on the job site, and that was a Japanese food cafeteria, which if you ever thought cafeteria food was bad in the States, and over there, that was a whole different world. And so every Friday, all of us in the office would pile into a couple of vans and drive about a half a mile from the park down to the little shopping center in the little town of Iriyasu. And we would go to a Denny's to have an American lunch, which was still an adventure, because trying to explain what you wanted from the menu and get them to understand it. The first time I went, I looked at something, I thought, oh, tuna melt, that looks really good. I'll have that. So the girl came and I said, I'll have the tuna melt. And she kind of tilted her head and went, tuna melt? And I said, yeah, the tuna melt. And I said it 3 or 4 times, and she was repeating what I was saying and saying the same thing. Finally, I pointed on the menu and she goes, oh, tuna melt. And it all sounded the same. And everybody else looks at me like, what was that all about? So, but it was, we would go there to get our little bit of American food, because some of the cafeteria food there, some of it was pretty good, but some of it was really weird.
What I appreciated in Japan was all the plastic food at the restaurant. So you could look at it. My dad worked for a Japanese company. He always talked about the plastic food, and if there was a piece of steak with 3 peas on it on the plastic food, that's exactly how many people
Yeah.
in real life. But there were times I would just stand outside the restaurant, figure out what I wanted, write down 32 on a piece of paper, walk in, give it to them. They bring it back. I mean, they didn't speak any English. Carol has a story she may want to tell about. You were talking about different food and hamburgers and that. We're in Wales, and we decided to go for some American food just to get away from fish and chips for a while. So tell them about the Great
What was it?
American
Was it the
Burger.
Great American Burger or the All American Burger?
The Great American,
Burger. So we ordered hamburgers, and I swear they must use 1 cow a year. It was so full of fillers. It was awful. It was just awful.
Oh yeah, and we had a long drive going into Wales, and traffic was bad going over the bridge and everything. So let's just get something to eat real fast. Don't want to go to a restaurant. Let's go get that. We finished that. It was like, well, where do we find a restaurant? It was terrible.
Well, actually, Wimpy's is much better than that was.
Yeah. Every time we have a bad piece of food, we try to compare it to the Great American Burger. It was nasty.
Your
So-
best
My
bet
first-
when you're in a foreign country is just to eat what they
Exactly.
eat there. I found the English food fine.
I
mean,
did too. I like a lot of stuff over there, actually, like steak and kidney pie, for example,
I never had.
which
that.
other people wouldn't touch. I know. I think I made it one time.
I
about-
never had
how
steak
about-
and kidney pie.
How
That's
about
very British.
toad in a hole?
Oh yeah, there used to be a place at the Los Angeles County Fair that was called Toad in a Hole. It's
Is that
fun.
is that
It's
a
an
food?
actual- That's
Yeah,
a
but
dish.
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
What is it?
I know it was.
I'm trying to remember myself. It's been years since I
Isn't it an
had
egg
it, and
dish?
I think it is. Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's an.
I don't
egg
know what
dish.
that. I mean, I think a friend of mine had
I'll
it.
look
and
it
we
up.
Went in there one time, but I don't remember what was in it.
Yeah.
Bubbles and
But that's-
sweet.
but-
There's all sorts of strange things.
I
was
think
in
the egg
Tokyo.
is in the hole.
Oh, is
I was
it?
in Tokyo, our manager from there was actually from for a while a fellow from Hong Kong, and he loved to try to serve the Americans food that they wouldn't eat, and I was determined not to let this bastard win. So we would go to some restaurant and he'd order some horrible stuff, and I would eat it. And one day he brought up this thing of sea urchin tarts, and he said, you're not going to eat this one, and I ate it. I thought it's actually pretty good, right? So the guy was a real comedian. As a joke, he has the waitress bring over a tray of 12 more of these sea urchin tarts, and it was sea urchin roe and a cheese thing. It was, and he put it down in front of me, and he's all looking to see what I'm going to do. So I looked at it and said, well, you don't think I'm going to share these, are you? It's just, I'm a very finicky eater, so the fact I could do it, the one time that we really got there was a restaurant we went to where they had a tank of fish swimming around, and you were in a horseshoe shape around this tank, and there's a big thing of fish going around, and on your placemat, there were pictures of all the type of fish and a number. And the idea was you would look at the menu and you point to 13, and the guy would chase the number 13 around the tank with a net, bring it out. Well, the guy next to me, Tony, he orders a thing. We get it, puts it on the plate, and the fish is still moving. The guy reaches underneath the counter, comes up with 2 electrodes, puts it on the fish. The fish zaps up in the air, comes flopping back down, and the water's still running out of its gills. The fish is still twitching. The guy says to me, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to eat someplace else." You know? And Tony's looking at this fish, it's still twitching. And, we said, "Yeah, we're leaving." The guy said, "We have to pay for the fish." And we said, "We don't care, we'll pay for the fish." I mean, I couldn't believe he just electrocuted the thing right there in front of us. I mean,
Well, did you ever go to a place that had the live lobsters?
Yeah.
Alive on your table. And
Yeah,
they'd already cut into the tail for it into sections, and the rest of the lobsters there on the plate, twitching and looking. I swear, when you reached and grabbed a piece of it to cook, because you would cook it yourself. I can't remember exactly the details of it, but to pull it out, it was almost like he was looking back over his shoulder and like, "What are you doing back there?" And it was really weird. And I remember the Japanese company that took us out to dinner, they ordered 2 of them, and they both came at the same time, of course. And one of them, the guy looked at and sent it away because it wasn't active enough, wasn't fresh
Oh, my
enough.
goodness.
But that was a really weird experience. But we couldn't say anything because we were invited to dinner by one of the Japanese contractors that was building the park, and they wanted to celebrate the completion of their project and how honored they were to work for us. And so you couldn't dishonor them by saying, "I ain't going to touch that," But it was really kind of weird to see these things alive still, and you're taking pieces of them out. And it took
there was a little lady I used
It
to
was
know.
fresh.
She was from Scotland, and she lived here in Torrance area. And her boyfriend and her decided to go and get a live lobster, from the pier. And they brought it home, and she put it in water. And of course, the water wasn't quite boiling, it was tepid. And she put the lid on, and the thing started to make noise as the water started to,
oh yeah, they'll scream.
And finally, there went the top, and it got out. And it got out and went underneath the refrigerator. And they just had a hell of a time getting that thing back in the, it didn't want to go in there. I don't blame it. And they finally got it in there. And the whole time it was cooking until it finally died, she could hear it screaming about that. And they did get it cooked, but it was so traumatic to her, she couldn't have any of it.
That screaming is actually the air rushing out of the shell.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh,
That sure
really?
sounds like a scream.
Yeah, they don't have
Well,
vocal
I don't know.
cords.
He wasn't digging it, and he jumped out, so he
Yeah.
must have been feeling something. But
Well, that's
yeah, she had to chase that thing all over the kitchen to get it back in the.
Yeah, they claim they have new nervous systems and they can't feel it at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I don't believe.
I don't know about that,
Did-
but you're supposed to have real boiling, rolling boiling water to put them in, so it's
Yeah.
essentially
Well, she
instantaneous. Yeah, and that's
She
the
didn't.
problem.
Yeah.
You
Bill,
gotta
did you
But
mention?
he wasn't having none of it.
Yeah, well, he was just trying to escape. It's like, I don't like being in this can, whether it was hot or not. It just,
Carol,
Did
were
you
gonna say
mention
something?
your experience with fugu fish?
No, we went out one night to a restaurant, and there's a fish called fugu fish. It's a blowfish, and if you get near the liver, it will kill you. So the whole thing is they have this. The chefs all have to go to a certain school and be licensed and everything. And when I was over there, there was a big scandal that people like to push the edge and get as close to it and get a buzz from it. And this one very, very popular Japanese TV star had convinced his chef to go further than he should. And the guy died. So now the chef had to go to prison. But we went out to this really nice restaurant, just me, this Japanese fellow, and an interpreter. And it was really a beautiful spot. And a panel would open up, and this woman would come in on her knees with a tray and serve the food. And there were no seats. We were kneeling or sitting cross-legged on the floor. So, and I don't know what I'm eating. I'm eating away. And the interpreter at one time says, Agawa-san wants to know if you are okay. I said, yeah, I'm doing all right. Because if you go numb, please let us know. And I think, no, my legs feel fine. She goes, oh, no, not your legs. If you start turning numb overall. And I said, why would I turn numb overall? She goes, in case anything's wrong with the fugu fish. And I've just watched on TV the night before about this guy going to prison for killing this TV comedian. And now, I mean, it tasted okay, but now, it's funny that you get through the first half of it and you're going great. Now, when you realize this could kill me, it was, Brock, you were saying you don't want to say no. Okay, I'll eat it. I'm actually thinking of, can I flip into the potted plant or something? But yeah, that was a very bizarre thing. So somebody mentioned about rubber bands called elastics, and I just happened to have bought a box of rubber bands, and they are Advantage rubber bands, but they're also bands elastiques. So different parts of the country. I didn't realize they called them elastics in other parts of the U.S. So, but
paper clips in French are called trombones.
no kidding.
Yep.
Looks like it.
The strangest one I encountered was a long time ago. I lived in Vermont for a long time. You buy an ice cream there, they call them creamies. Okay. Come down to Texas and order a creamy and see what look you're going to. When I moved to Round Rock, I walked in, yeah, you sell creamies here? And they just all looked at me like, what are you talking about?
Well, even like New York State, I grew up born in Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island, and I went to college upstate in Potsdam, way upstate New York. And I got out of school, and a couple of years later, 2 years later, I'm doing a job in Buffalo. And Buffalo is only about maybe 3-4 hour drive or something from Potsdam. And I walked we went into a restaurant, and the waitress says, what do you want? And I said, oh, I guess I'll have a roast beef sandwich. He says, do you want that on tack? And I never heard this before. What is tack? Well, tack is a Kaiser roll with salt on top of it. So it's and everybody in Buffalo, you don't know what tack is? I said, I have no idea what tack is. I've never seen it or heard of it any other place other than Buffalo, New York. So it's funny how you end up with certain things that are very local to a certain area, and then you go someplace else and nobody has heard anything about what you're talking about. So
So
first time I ever heard the expression lolly for candy was on the airplane. One British woman, her baby was fussing. Do you have any lollies? I have no clue what you're talking about.
They should have said gripe water.
Oh, that would have helped me. Yeah.
you know what gripe water is?
No.
Carol?
Oh, it's alcohol. It's got alcohol in it, and they give it to babies to quiet them down.
My mother just put brandy on our gums when we were.
It's similar, but for that's because you were teething.
Right.
But this is just being fussy. They would kind of dope up the baby with gripe water. I think I brought home an empty bottle of that one time from England.
Yeah, it looks like a regular milk bottle that, we would all get delivered back in the 50s in New York. The milkman would come around. There would be a little metal chest outside the house. He'd open up, put the milk in there. And
with a little fan that said you want cottage cheese or.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But this bottle, it's gripe water. That's the sort of thing. It's actually interesting. A friend of mine has a daughter-in-law that is against everything, non-natural for the baby. So when the baby's teething, you don't put whatever the gel is on it or something. You just let the kid scream. Well, that's great because the mother ends up having my friends watch the kid most of the time. So I'm saying, look, just put some of this stuff on the kid's mouth, and mom won't know or something. And I said the other thing you use is alcohol. And she said, what? Put that on the baby's gums? I said, no, you take a couple shots yourself. I won't care. But yeah, gripe water was, the first time Carol mentioned, because our kid, Margot was teething, and she said, oh, we got to have some gripe water in it. What the hell are you talking? 10% alcohol and off the shelf. Yeah, overseas, you can go buy a bottle of, again, overseas is so different. You go to places like, Tokyo. Did you see beer machines all over the place?
Oh yeah, that was a beer and even hard liquor vending machines. You can get your whiskey, not any longer, but they were there at one time. And we always found it interesting that their whiskey commercials were not about how you can have fun with your friends or, a good party. And, it was all about drowning your sorrows is what it seemed to be. We couldn't understand what they're saying in Japanese, but all the imagery and all the music was kind of like forgetting the sorrows of your life. And it was really kind of a weird thing. But I was going back to your tack. It probably comes from the hardtack, which was a type of bread that they used for
On
the
ships, right?
ships and the armies, because it was salted in order for it to preserve and not start to get all moldy. So they have a bread-like product to be able to eat.
I think it was more
over
like
their
a
food.
cracker because it was all dried out.
Yeah, it was pretty dried out, but the tack, but it was because it was salted, I think, heavily salted. And so the
Probably.
tack is probably bread with salt on it, and that's where it came from as far as why they call it tack, I bet.
Yeah, Richard's saying in the chat, it's also called WEC. So, maybe I got tack wrong over here as the brain cells are going. I just remember it was something, that everybody in Buffalo knew exactly what they were talking about. And I said, it's again funny that you go to some city for the first time. I moved to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Anybody been to Pittsfield? Beautiful town in the Berkshire Mountains. It's really nice. And I went there for my first full-time job out of college. And we went out on our first day to a little bar, and they're serving hot dogs. So I sit down, and again, I don't know anybody. I'm still trying to remember. Okay, you're my boss. Your name is Bill. You're whatever. And the waitress comes by, and she asked the first guy, "What does he want?" He says, "I'll have a beer, and I'll have 8 dogs." And I'm saying to myself, 8 hot dogs? Wow, And gets the next one, I'll have 6. And I'm thinking, how the hell do you eat 6 hot dogs? Gets to me, and I said, well, I'll have 2. And she looks at me like I've, grown another head. She goes, you only want 2? And somebody said, oh, he's new. Well, it turns out in Pittsfield and in Albany, New York, is very popular, these little mini hot dogs. And they make them special, and they make little special miniature hot dog buns and everything. So I said, well, okay, I'll have 6, and then they brought them out, and I had that. We years later went over to Albany, and there was a chain of hot dogs up there called Charlie's Hot Dogs. And my daughter does not like hot dogs, but she saw the size of these Charlie's Hot Dogs. Remember, Carol? She just thought the greatest thing to have kid-sized. I mean, she was a kid, and now she's having these little kid-sized hot dogs. I've never seen it other than that belt of between Albany and Pittsfield.
Well, they do have a little. They don't have buns, but they do have little. I don't remember what they're called, but you can get them in the market here. A package of them, little tiny hot dogs.
Yeah, you can get those as I don't know.
They have a different name. It's different.
Yeah, I think it's like an hors d'oeuvre type sausage.
Yeah.
But these
like
little hot dog buns, and it was mustard, ketchup, and Charlie's Hot Dogs was really big because they put chili on them. So that was a big thing. You get a little whatever 3-inch long chili.
That's it. Cocktail wieners. Yes.
Yeah, right. But again, it was very big in that 130-mile belt between that area. Why it becomes so big in one area, and then you go 40 miles away, and people don't know what the hell you're talking about.
In the movie A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles, I'd seen it many times. And there is a part where George Harrison is talking to somebody, and they give him something, and he said, "Ta."
Thank you.
It took me all my life to figure out why he was saying.
That's what you say, how you say thank you. Ta.
Thank you.
Ah.
But it was ta.
No, it was ta, probably.
I just, and the guy says, well, at least he's polite. And that should have been, a clue. But I never did figure out what that meant until the last 10 years. He was saying it was thank you. It might have been a Liverpool thing. I don't know. But
it's a British thing. Yeah. It's
yeah. And it's interesting. It's a popular movie with the 60 kids. But
it's a great movie.
I never knew Tom meant thank you.
First brought up another good one here. Do you use the term wedge for hoagie or sub sandwich? Or do you mean torpedo, or do you mean hero, or is it so? There's just so many names for that particular type of sandwich, and again, that's where this website. If I knew the address, I'd put it down. what do you call the following? And you put down a sub
Yeah.
sandwich, bing, bang, boom, then they can
Do you
narrow
rec-
it down.
Is that a recognizable term for you though at all, wedge or no?
I hadn't heard that one.
Okay, because we actually, one of our, like the restaurant where we would sell those was called the Wedge Inn. Because it was that prolific, that's what they were. We had pepper and egg wedge. It was just,
Well, I'm from Philadelphia and they call those big sandwiches submarines because an hour later after you eat them, they surface on you.
Like a
Carol,
Tommy
you were
burger.
mentioning,
Fun to me.
Carol, you were mentioning about liking English food. The
Uh,
first time I went to Europe, we had Arthur Frommer's Europe on. I think then it was
Oh, yeah.
$15 a day or whatever. This was in
$5.
1974.
I think it was $5 a day.
Well, one time it was, yeah. I think
Yeah.
by 74 it was $10 or $15. And we stuck to it. Cash came home with money, but his wife at the time kind of did these like sidebars about, different sites and different countries. And her recommendation in London was to eat ethnic food, which is what we did. The first time I ever had Indian food was
Oh, I like the Indian food there.
yeah,
It was
in
good.
London. She said, skip the English staples, like you say, steak and kidney pie, and save your money for when you get to the continent and eat nicer food like in France or, Spain or whatever. Yeah. And also I learned in 1974, I had never known that ice was kind of an American thing for drinks. I always assumed
Yes.
everybody put tons of ice in their drink. And our first stop was in Paris, and you order a Coke and it's room temperature, basically a shot glass of Coke. They never fill up the glass or anything, and we wanted ice so badly. So we were coming back from Versailles. We had taken the metro out to Versailles, or as close as you could get to it. We're coming back. We get off several stops from our hotel, and we're looking for a snack or whatever. And we see this ice truck. They're delivering ice to a disco in huge blocks. So we talked to the guy, and we paid him like the equivalent of like $1.50 or whatever for this giant block of ice, which now, of course, we have to get back to the hotel. So we're dragging this ice down the street in Paris, get to the hotel. It was all young kids. It was not even a hostel. It was just an inexpensive hotel. We made a general announcement, ice in room, 32. It was mostly Americans staying there. All these people showed up with their glasses, and we were using a pocket knife to chip ice off this giant block. And everybody, we all ran down to the local market and bought, liter sizes of Cokes or orange soda or whatever. And that ice, it managed to last a couple of days. It kept melting, but we eventually melted all together. But a couple of days we had ice. And we eventually faced the fact that we weren't going to get ice in Europe, and we couldn't be dragging ice blocks down the road every time. So
My first trip to England, I think, was on British Airways, and I was really excited on going overseas. This was going to be really great. And she came down the aisle and I said, "What would you like?" And I said, "I'll have a Coke." And she said, "American style?" I said, "What else is there?" She goes, "Well, I heard the accent. You probably want ice." I said, "Yeah, I want ice." That was my introduction to the fact that ice was going to be very far and few between for the as you
yeah, I learned really quick when I first started flying. I flew a lot of Mexico City trips, and I learned real quick to say sin hielo or con hielo, yeah, with or without ice, because you'd pour it with ice, assuming that's the way people drink it, and no, sin hielo, and so of course you have to pour it out and start over. So and then how many times you were tempted to put your hand in the cup and take the ice out, say here you go, but you couldn't do that.
Randy mentioned serving sizes, and that reminded me that back in '64 and '65, supersizing was not yet a thing.
Oh, that's true.
And the all you could drink 7-Up at the 7-Up Sandwich Pavilion was served in 4-ounce cups.
Wow.
Yes, I keep going
That's
back
like a-
online.
Yeah, I remember.
I
had-
remember, oh,
When I was in England, I was only 16. We had to go to a nice restaurant to find water with ice. They just didn't do that.
they
there.
didn't drink water really either. That wasn't.
Well, I don't know.
typical.
This place gave us water. I guess it was all right because I'm still alive.
No, it's fine. It's just they don't drink water
No.
normally.
You ask for a glass of ice water, they will think you're crazy. Carol, remember this one, you're talking about portion size. We were in England and, I remember the office would always order sandwiches, like watercress sandwiches. I mean, I want a big hunk of dead cow or something, right? But we were out in one place and I ordered a sandwich and,
Oh, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking.
yeah, it came with a round of ham, right? And it was one round piece of ham on a bun. So the next place I go to, I'm going to be very clever. I want a real sandwich. So I said, I'd like 2 rounds of ham, please, on my sandwich, right? So the lady, oh, okay, fine. And she goes back and comes back with 2 sandwiches with 1 piece of ham on each of them. I just took them, put them together or whatever. But it was like, oh my God, just trying to get it. That's why we wanted to go to the Great American Burger. We thought we were going to get something great. But, yeah, portion sizes are certainly very different.
Yeah. And I remember finding peanut butter in Paris in the gourmet section of the market.
Well,
They
another
don't
thing
eat
that,
peanut butter. normally.
Gourmet peanut butter.
Well, no, it wasn't gourmet. It was just peanut butter, but
Yeah,
they
I
don't,
was
they don't
gourmet.
eat peanut butter normally. So for them, it was,
Yeah.
I guess,
I
And
think
I
until
went to,
fairly recently, peanut butter has kind of been considered a luxury in
I guess so.
many
because
parts of the world, I
It
think.
surprised me a lot to find it there.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me. I could remember reading that people, would want to send their European relatives or friends, whatever, in Europe, a gift, and one of the most popular things was a jar of peanut butter.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
that I didn't know, but anyway, and then I could not find, I was gonna make the people that I became friends with in London, some, was it waffles or pancakes? And I could not find maple syrup anywhere. They don't have it. So the closest they have is golden syrup, which is not really maple, but it's similar.
yeah, we had a
I mean,
friend
there
of
are things
ours.
you just can't find. What's that?
My college roommate was living in Germany for several years, and I used to keep him well supplied with maple syrup. That I would go over to Germany on business and I'd bring him a bottle of it, or if I wasn't going there that month, I'd mail him some of it. And I can remember the German customs, when they opened up the suitcase and they see this thing of maple syrup in there, they were like, "You put this on food?"
Yeah, first time I took my friend from Brazil out to, I think it was IHOP or someplace, and try the pancakes. So they were just totally disgusting to him. I mean, it's just the butter, the syrup, the consistency, the whole 9 yards, just not something somebody from Brazil was used to. Yeah.
I went to the University of Southampton when I was in England, and I was there for a month. And I want you to know, it's just like eating at Hogwarts. They had long tables with, backless seats. You sit on a big bench. But I will say England had the best butter I'd ever tasted.
Oh, definitely.
Still remember their butter, because we'd have cereal and toast and butter in the morning.
Yeah.
And we'd sit at the Hogwarts tables,
I buy
And
the
their butter was just amazing. It was
I buy the Carrie's Irish butter at Trader Joe's.
really.
It's fairly expensive, but it's so good. I don't use that much butter. And if I only use that for like toast or whatever, where you can really taste it. If I'm gonna use butter in cooking, I just use regular old
When I
Land
went over
O'Lakes or whatever.
when I went to Munich for the first time, there was a deli down the street, or what to me a deli was a butcher shop or something. And I wanted a turkey sandwich, and I asked for a turkey sandwich with mayo. That is not something you get very easily in Germany. So I went then to a specialty supermarket, and they had a small jar of mayonnaise, And I would go to, this sandwich shop 2-3 days a week, and I'd have to come in, just ask for a plain crouton steak sandwich, turkey sandwich, and have my own little jar of mayonnaise and put it on there. And the people, I think, in the German office were, like, oh God, look what this idiot's doing this time. But it's everything so regional. Like when people think of mustard, how many people think of yellow mustard versus brown mustard?
Yellow.
Yeah. Out here in California, it's yellow. In New York, it's brown. So we took our kids back east, and we were actually at the World's Fair grounds, and we wanted to go for basically a picnic lunch. We went to a nearby deli, went and asked for food, and they put the mustard on, and it was brown mustard, which the kids thought was like toxic. So we had to go to some place and get a simple little jar of squeeze bottle of yellow mustard that we carried on with us for the rest of the 2 weeks we're back there. Just like me with my jar of mayonnaise, you walk around with your thing of yellow mustard rather, that you could put on food, because the kids were, this is terrible. This isn't real mustard. To me, from New York, it was real mustard, but they were so used to it.
Randy, did you ever come across Marmite on your travels?
Oh, that's awful stuff.
I have,
I know
but I
it's
can't,
terrible, isn't it?
I've never tried it, and I have. I can't remember what it is.
It's of some vegetable. I don't know. It's preserved vegetable stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I went on a month-long camping tour my first summer in Europe that was based in London, and every morning the breakfast was either bread with jam or bread with Marmite, and all of the British people loved Marmite. So I never developed a taste for it.
Yeah, I never tried it. I've heard of it. Yeah.
Glenn Barker mentioned he asked for mayo on a pastrami sandwich in a New York deli, and the guy almost threw me out.
Yeah, I can understand.
I don't blame the guy. Yeah.
No.
When I get pastrami sandwiches, I specifically say don't put mayo on it.
Yeah.
Lots of mustard, but not mayo. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask. Bill, you said about finding a jar of mayo. I found in Europe that mayo usually comes in tubes, like toothpaste tubes.
Actually, you're right. Now that you mention it, the first time I got it was in a tube, and I, used a certain amount of it, and then put it in the refrigerator at the office, and somebody would throw it out, like, "What's this doing in here?" But yeah, it was. I finally found someplace. I think it was at a PX or something where they had a jar of it. It was interesting because the Germans. I was not in the American military, but my college roommate was, so I could go to the PX and get stuff over there. But we had a situation where we had Clint Eastwood come into town, and Clint only wanted to drink American beer. And trying to find American beer in Germany is not the easiest thing to do. So our manager was really smart. He called the nearest Air Force base and said, we'd like to get a case or so of American beer. And they said, you can't do that. It's only for soldiers. And we said, well, it's for Clint Eastwood. He's in town and we'd like to do it. And the guy said, yeah, bullshit. And I said, no, I mean, would you guys like to meet Clint Eastwood? If he brought the beer here, okay. So I asked them if they would, as long as you're coming, would you pick me up a jar of mayonnaise? And the guy said, I've never had anybody call up and ask for a case of beer and a jar of mayonnaise, but I was tired of the little tubes. So they came driving out to our office, and they were very leery about whether or not they were there. And there was Clint Eastwood. And next thing you know, we're sitting around the beer, the office popping cans of beer and drinking beer with Clint Eastwood, and these airmen were just in heaven. But that's how I got the jar, was from the PX. But yeah, otherwise it just came in like ketchup package tubes.
You mentioned the difficulty of finding mayonnaise, but on the other hand, I've encountered fries served with mayonnaise instead of ketchup.
That's the only way I'll eat them. I love them now. Of course, no cholesterol at all.
Yeah, I know what you were saying.
It's funny about the tubes. A couple of times when I flew European trips, Frankfurt, Paris, whatever, the catering, of course, out of, let's say Paris is local. And those flights have 2 meals, like it'll be lunch leaving Paris, and then coming in, to the US, a couple hours out of LA or whatever. you serve a snack. It's a hot snack, or it's a choice of a salad or whatever. One of the choices was a hamburger. I mean, they were so good out of Paris. I mean, they used the best meat, but yeah, the little condiments came, little tiny tubes of mayonnaise, mustard, and ketchup sitting next, on the passenger tray next to the burger, and then, the lettuce and all next to that. But yeah, that was unique to the catering out of Paris.
Yeah,
No,
Beth just mentioned a fried sauce in Netherlands. I did try that, and it was the mix of mayo kind of put me off, but the spicings and other things were in there. By the way, Beth also put in 2 links for dialect cruise tests, so you can all go and see whether or not you were raised where your parents told you were, or adopted or something.
Yeah, the first one wasn't very good, but the second one came out with Ozark or Southern Appalachia for me. So I figure that's close enough. I mean, I'm from Tennessee, so.
You're from Cincinnati?
I'm from Tennessee.
I'm sorry?
Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee. Okay, yeah. When you said Cincinnati, I was going to ask if you knew about canned chili on spaghetti. That's a big thing there. It's good.
Bob's Big Boy has chili spaghetti. They always used to anyway.
They call it chili sides or something like that.
No, that's with a hamburger patty.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in fact, at the Cincinnati airport, there's a brand of chili that's really popular in that region, I guess, kind of specifically for spaghetti. And they had a snack bar there at the food court that had just, 200, 300 cans of this canned chili, behind the counter as a display to get your attention. And, they just pour a small can of chili on your spaghetti. Actually, I thought it was great.
I had a colleague who worked the lunch line in college, and he got so tired of people asking for everything on their hamburger that one day he made up a batch of everything. But nobody would take it because it looked terrible.
Well, what
I'm
you were
gonna have to
saying-
say sayonara. I want
See you
to
later, Kendall.
call you. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed listening to you all.
Great, good seeing you.
Very
again.
nice.
Good night, Jim.
Have a
Stay
good
well
day.
and take care,
Bye-bye.
okay?
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, one thing, when you do travel, you just, you never ask for everything, because everything in one state is totally different than everything in another state. And some places just some cities, they just do really weird things compared to others. But it's all part of the fun of travel. I was in northern Italy, and I had brought a little phrase book of Germany, and I would go around and try to be as conversant as I could, having no German. And I ended up in some restaurant where the dialect up there was so different. The dialect was so different. In my phrase book was, I might as well have had a Swahili phrase book. And I'm trying to figure out the menu and what to order. And there was every page, and the waiter's standing there looking, and I can't find anything that matches. So I finally just got up, walked over to the table, pointed, I'll have whatever they're having. I still to this day don't know what I ate. But I mean, there was just no way. I mean, they didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any German at the time. I only speak next to none. I could have had Carol with me. She could have interpreted, but the phrase book was of zero use to me whatsoever.
Yeah,
they put in the book, and the guy just, ik versteeg niks. I'm sorry, okay. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got to be careful saying I'll have what the guy next to me is having. My friend and I were in Hungary, and we were driving out of Budapest, to see the countryside and all that, and pulled into a restaurant, and nobody spoke English. And it was one of the few times we had a menu where there was no English on it. So we're just kind of looking. We had figured out a couple of words. We've been in Hungary for maybe a week, and we kind of figured out the word for chicken or for beef and pork, whatever. But the guy next to us has this thing that really looks good. So my friend Don says, what is he having? Where he's pointing at, and the waiter described it by mooing like a cow, pointing to his head. So we figured out it was cow brain. So we said, "Oh, we'll pass on that one."
Yeah. Brent Warner just put a great joke in the chat. The Buddhist monk to the hot dog vendor, make me one with everything. Well, someday I hope that Carol and I would be traveling again and we can go to some place and be grossed out by the local foods. You know, right now it's like, oh wow, we went to the other side of Granada Hills. That was exciting, but you know, it's been fun. I mean, I did enjoy travel. Yeah, and I went not as many miles as say Randy would go, but I got a couple of million miles in my belt under my Warner Brother days. And I really did get a kick out of going to different places and trying things. But sometimes you only try them once. How many people have had lutefisk?
Yeah, I have. I can't remember what it is, but I know I've had it.
It's a herring. I think it's herring. It's a fish you put in a very heavy brine solution and basically let it putrefy.
Right.
It's really just it's terrible. When we were in Norway, you know, they said, oh, Americans never eat lutefisk. And well, I'll eat anything once. Well, once was enough. And then, well, even in Norway, again, different vernacular. We were eating at a restaurant, and we were right near where the seaport and everything. And I looked at the restaurant and said, crab cocktail. And I said, oh, this would be great. I love crab, and I'll order a crab cocktail. Here in the United States, if you get a crab cocktail, what do you get? Shredded crab meat, right? In Norway, you get a crab and a hammer. No joke. And I mean, so they put this crab down. Luckily, he's dead, you know. But I mean, you know, man, I got to work for this son of a bitch meal, you know, and beating this thing and everything, and then cracking it and everything. It was, you know, now you got to pick little pieces of shell out of your crab meat and everything. But I mean, I was really expecting a crab, and everybody else at the table, yeah, I'll get a crab cocktail too. Now we all sitting there.
What was the cocktail part of that?
It had a little kind of cocktail sauce that you would then take your crab meat.
Oh, then dip it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know, but I mean, I was not expecting a crab on a plate with a hammer. You know, it's just.
Bill, back to the lutefisk. Don't they serve that with a very potent alcohol drink?
Yes.
Usually, and I always felt that the reason they did that was, yeah, they say they love the lutefisk, but they immediately take to the drink to kind of wash it out. I think
it was aqua,
sterilize your mouth.
Like yeah, it was like, you know, 200 proof, knock you out of your sock sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But
there's a Swedish town about 45 miles from me, Lindsborg, Kansas, and it's a big dish there. It's a very popular thing. I tried it once, kind of on a dare. Probably not going to do that again.
No, Carol is pretty good for trying things in a dare. Tell them about the ice cream you had in Maine.
Yeah, in Maine, I had lobster ice cream because it was there. It didn't impress me. I wouldn't be having it again. Somehow the taste of lobster and the ice cream, which is sweet, usually didn't go together that well.
Yeah, I've had garlic ice cream up at the Garlic Festival in Gilroy.
Yeah, that doesn't appeal to me either.
It wasn't that good, but I mean, it didn't taste like you would imagine it to taste.
Yeah.
The garlic was very mild.
We got a kick when we were up in Maine. I've got a picture of it someplace. The sort of thing you only see in Maine. We were in an ice cream shop. There were signs all over the patio area. Absolutely no eating lobster on this patio. Not the sort of general prohibition you see at most places, but there was a lobster place down the street, and they didn't want people coming to using their table.
They do eat a lot of lobster there, though.
Oh goodness, everywhere. Creamies or vanilla maple flavor only. Yeah, I mean,
really, we called them creamies for everything. You had vanilla or chocolate or blueberry.
I could be wrong, but the only creamies I saw when I was up there in March were kind of vanilla base with
the maple.
Good maple flavor too.
Yeah, we would have called it a maple creamy. Now, remember, I haven't lived in Vermont for, dear Lord, 40 years. We did see some creamy signs when we were up there a couple of years ago, but I didn't note the actual flavors. So, but yeah, we called everything creamies back in those days.
Yeah, I'll defer to you, but the maple vanilla combination really is good.
It is good. Yeah, they're
Sounds
outstanding.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed them.
Well, again, things are very different locally. Harold, maybe you'd like to tell everybody about poutines. Is that how it's pronounced?
What's that?
Yes, poutine.
Oh, Harold. Okay, I thought you said Carol. Sorry.
No, originally from Quebec.
Oh, that's
so-
cheese curds, right?
Yes, over French fries.
We don't have that out here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
very
known as a
popular.
hangover cure by some.
There are a couple restaurants in Long Beach that serve that. One is a sports bar. The other is actually, that's all they serve is different styles of poutine. And it's actually, Bill, you probably know kind of where this is, where McDonnell Douglas used to be by, Long Beach Airport there. When McDonnell Douglas closed all those facilities down, the city funded, it's a really nice shopping center, but there's a food court in the middle called the Hangar, and it has booths that specialize in various foods. A lot of them are international. There's Vietnamese food. It's one that specializes in those Vietnamese sandwiches. I've never tried it. There's a booth that specializes in poutine.
Mm.
And the menu looks interesting, but I've just never tried it.
Usually served over fries, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of cholesterol in there.
Just a bit.
But that's pretty much just a Eastern Canada thing, isn't it? I mean, I don't think
I
you'll find
think
that
so.
in Vancouver or places like that.
Yeah, mainly spread it from the province of Quebec into Ontario, maybe about 10 years ago.
Right.
Harold, were potato chips, what do they call them with the malt vinegar? Are those popular in Eastern Canada?
I think so. There are all sorts of flavors of potato chips.
The first time I ever had them was on layovers in Calgary or Edmonton, Western
okay.
Canada. They were real popular there. I had never seen them before. You can get them here pretty much anywhere now.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're very good. I love them.
Well, we get a kick out of going into markets when we're in England and some of the flavors of potato chips. You get.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, holy crap,
They
and
call
we
them
tried
crisp.
some, it's just wow.
The flavor choices for chips in Asia are interesting too.
I bet. Kind of fishy, probably.
Squid flavor is a favorite in Korea.
Yeah, I've tried those. They're not bad.
Well,
Yeah, they aren't bad, but they're kind of a surprise.
growing up in the East, we had two flavors of potato chips. I think we had Lay's and Y's potato chips.
That's not flavors, that's brands.
I know, but they were all the same. It was
And growing up in California, our two choices were Laura Scudder and Granny Goose.
yeah,
Yes, exactly, Granny Goose.
yeah. So all of a sudden they start, it's like, with sodas these days, so how many different variations or Oreo cookies. There's got to be 20, 30 versions of Oreo cookies these days.
I drop.
If you're ever in Atlanta, go to the World of Coca-Cola, which I guess is
Oh, we
moved.
were there. Yeah.
It used to be near Underground Atlanta, or it's called. Because when I went before, as you left, they had a room you could taste their products from around the world.
Yeah.
There were some really bizarre Asians.
Yes, exactly.
We tried the one called Beverly.
Beverly, yeah.
It's absolutely just terrible. It's so bad that when 2020 came out and the pandemic broke out, somebody did a meme and said 2020 is the Beverly of years.
The funny thing about Beverly is you drink it and at first you're saying, what's the big fuss about? This isn't so bad. And it's got a delayed aftertaste, and that's what gets you. And about 4 seconds later, you're out.
And yet it's extremely popular in some places. Yeah, we loved going, and they had Coke World in Vegas too, where it was different. In Coke World in Vegas, you ordered and they brought you out like 12 cups or something, and you tried it. Vegas and Coke World in Atlanta, you could just stay on the line as long as you wanted and just keep trying them all. And that was yeah.
What?
Beth is mentioning
Hold
it's
on a
by the
second.
Georgia Aquarium, and they did a great aquarium too. We really enjoyed that. But
Yeah, we really had fun. I went with a couple other crew members on a layover, and there were like 2 or 3 groups of school kids at the World of Coca-Cola. So yeah, they were in this hall where you could sample all the different beverages, and they were kind of chiding us on, "Oh, try this! It's really good! It's really good!" So yeah, we'd pour a little cup of it, and they'd wait for us to take a swig of it and spit it out, basically, and they'd start laughing at us. "Oh, try this over here! It's real good."
yeah,
Has anyone tried Cheerwine from North Carolina?
No.
Never heard of
It's
it.
like it's like Dr. Pepper on steroids, and it's really, really carbonated. It's the kind of, it's sort of like Dr. Pepper and battery acid, but it's really, really good. But it seems to just be distributed in North Carolina, except for Cracker Barrel stores, which carries it in the little glass bottles in their nostalgia pop section.
So it's not a wine. It doesn't have.
No, it's a soft drink.
Yeah.
It's a pop, a soda.
Yeah,
But it's great stuff.
my friend from Brazil, first time I took him to In-N-Out Burger, I hadn't tried Dr. Pepper. It's funny because he said, my mother always said it tasted like medicine to her. And that's exactly what he said. It tastes like medicine. I've never gotten that taste out of it.
Sorry. Glenn Barker mentioned for folks in our area about a poutine food truck up in Santa Clarita. We may have to drive up there and give that a try. And then Carlos mentioned the use of a spot at a Coke World thing at Epcot Center. So
Still there, yeah, they just moved it.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
It was called Club Cool originally, and they moved it across the plaza from where the fountain used to be into that big store, but it's still there. Mandy and I were going to go in there, but there's a huge line to get in, so.
all the Beverly lovers.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody had to get the Beverly. Has anyone here ever tried Moxie? That used to be popular in New England when I lived there, but you can barely find it now.
Richard Herring just dropped off in a chat. He said, sorry, he's got to go. He's going to get some poutine and wash it down with some stockpiled Moxie.
Moxie tastes like carbonated cough syrup. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not my favorite drink on the
I've
planet.
never had it, but I guess, prior to Coca-Cola, it was the soft drink.
Oh, it was big.
Yeah.
And now you can only get it in New England. Not that I go looking for it, mind you. I don't think I ever want to taste it again.
Yeah, one of my nerdy hobbies is numismatics, and I have a friend who lives in New Hampshire, and he's a major figure in the numismatic world, but he also has other interests. He wrote a book on Moxie probably about 20 years ago.
There's a specialty audience.
Yeah, really.
I thought I read
You're going to publish this recording on the Food Channel, Bill?
Yeah. Before we go, I have one last soda story, and folks that were at WED may remember Bruce Gordon. He was a Imagineer that a great guy, and unfortunately passed away way too young. But he had a habit. He was collecting Coke cans from around the world. And he had very proud of a Coke can from Japan and one from Brazil or whatever. So when I was going overseas, he asked if I would pick him up a Coke can from everywhere I went. So I did, and they had little 6-ounce Coke cans in England and a 14-ounce Coke can in Italy, and some of them were short little fat cans and other tall thin cans. So I was in Europe for 2-3 weeks, and I carried a little duffel bag, and I would just put the cans of Coke in this bag for Bruce coming back. So I was very happy. I mean, I'm bringing back Coke from the Netherlands, and here's one from Paris, and here's one from Munich. And so I get back to the United States, and I put my luggage down, and I said, "Do you have anything to declare?" And I said, "No, I'm under the limit." And they said, "What's in the duffel bag?" And I said, "It's full of Coke." Big mistake.
Yeah, wrong thing to say.
And the lady says, say that again. I said, it's full of Coke. And she pushes the button and it's, all of a sudden 4 other guys come over and said, he's got a bag full of Coke. And I said, oh, no, not that kind. I said, do you think I had any? I'd be that stupid to tell you. And she goes, amazingly, they do. So they opened up the bag and there were all these Coke cans and they all, sloshed them around. It's like, why would anybody collect Coke? And I said, my friend Bruce collects it. I'm bringing it back for him. And the lady said, well, okay. And the next time I came back, the same lady recognized me and she would joke with me again. You got any Coke this time? I said, no, this time I'm bringing in some Pepsi, but yeah, the look on her face, because I'm innocent. I don't know. I mean, Coke, what do I know? I got a bag full of Coke. So, well, thanks for joining. I hope we got way off from home movies, but it's kind of delightful to, again, travel is great. This is virtual travel. I made myself hungry and I have to go eat something.
Oh, boy, I was hungry till I heard somebody's combinations.
Yeah,
Before we go, I had mentioned in the chat that behind me is a picture of the US Pavilion at EXPO 2020. And the stars on the facade of that were very similar to the stars on the Astral Fountain. I wonder if they got any. I doubt it, but well, actually, I really doubt it because the US Pavilion at EXPO 2020 was funded by the Saudis. So,
well, the Astral Fountain stars are really neat because they actually had water jets in a number of them that they spin around by the water pressure, and others are just shooting water out, going on it. So my friend, again, he has it's huge, it's big. And we talked about taking it out in the yard and hooking it up to the hose. And his wife said, if you take it out, you're not bringing it back into the house. So it stays in its basement. But amazing how little pieces of things like that have survived. You wonder how many other stars or bits or things are out there. So, well, I hope folks I hope it cools off a bit. This week it's been very hot here in LA, but not as hot as it has been. And now they're saying we have a chance of rain the next 2 days. So keep your fingers crossed. It will be just enough to get our cars dirty.
Yeah.
So we have an outdoor event, National Night Out, on Tuesday night for the police department. And of course, if we're going to get rain, that's when we'll get it. About 4 years ago, we had rain on National Night Out. And I was doing bike patrol that night for crowd control and just got absolutely soaked. So this time, if it rains, I'm staying under the tent. So. Well, hope all folks have a good time, and we will see you later. And go take Beth's test and see where you grew up. Talk to you later.
Yeah, take care of everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill.
See you later.
Check out my pocketbook.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
Yeah, bye.
And now.
Bye.